Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to remove orange peel from your paint job. Right here we have some orange peel on this door. We're going to wet sand and polish that out. The first thing we're going to need is a piece of 2000 grit wet sanding paper. We're also going to need some 3000 grit Trizact paper. Do me a favor guys, if you find this video helpful, please smash that subscribe button. It'll really help out the channel. So I've already started wet sanding this panel, and first thing we want to do is to wet it down and get it clean. We want to remove any dust or dirt that may be on it, so I'm going to use my squeegee here and squeegee this clean. Like I said, I've already started wet sanding it, but in the center there's some orange peel that we want to get rid of still, so I'm going to show you how we're going to do that. What I found that works the best is to start off with a 2000 grit wet sanding paper. It's not real coarse, so it's not going to leave deep scratches. It's going to leave finer scratches. They're going to be easier to buff. So what I'm doing here is taking that 2000 grit and I'm going to wet sand, and I'm going to try and do it in one direction. I'm using my hand, the flat part of my hand, to do it. Now you can use a sponge block. I find it a little bit more difficult, so I use my hand and try and keep it flat. Avoid pressing down with your fingers. So we're going to continue to wet sand this entire panel. And one thing I want to note is if you have a real heavy amount of orange peel, then you may want to use a 1500 grit wet sanding paper, okay? That's going to cut it a lot quicker, make it a little bit easier on you. So I'm now done with the 2000 grit wet sanding paper. You want to wet sand it till it appears flat. When you clean it, you can tell if it looks flat. If you still have some orange peel, you're going to be able to tell where there's areas that haven't been sanded. So now I'm going to go over it with a 3000 grit Trizact sponge, and I'm going to hand sand it again in one direction and go over the entire panel. And before you start that, you want to make sure it's clean in between coats, and I squeegee it to clean it, make sure there's no dust or grit underneath my pad. Again, if you hear something scratching like an abrasive, just be mindful of that and stop what you're doing, hose it down, clean it off, so you have a good surface to be wet sanding on. So if you take a look here, you can see the difference between the 2000 grit and the 3000 grit. The 3000 grit leaves a lot finer scratches, and it makes it much easier to buff. So it pays to go over it with the 3000 grit, and sometimes I've even used a 5000 grit to make it even easier. So now that I'm done with the 3000 grit sanding, I'm going to wipe off the entire panel. All that white residue is Clearcoat that you've been sanding off. And if you let that stuff dry on your panel or on your vehicle, it's very difficult to get off. So you want to make sure it's clean before the buffing process. Now I'm going to use my orbital polisher to polish this out, and some Perfect-It 2 rubbing compound made by 3M. It's a very good compound. It's not too abrasive. So we're going to put like 3 or 4 dots on one area, and we're going to spread it over the pad, and then we're going to spread it on the panel. You want to do like a 1 foot by 1 foot section first, get that good and buffed and polished, and then move on to the next section. So I will start out the polishing with a low speed in order to get that compound spread out evenly, and then I'm going to move up the speed to like a 4 or a 5, and I'm going to apply a little bit of pressure as I'm polishing, and if I have a tough area where the scratches aren't coming out, I'll put a little bit more pressure on it. With an orbital polisher, you really don't have to worry about burning through this clear coat. It would take a lot of pressure. You'd have to stand on this thing on an edge in order for it to burn through. So don't be afraid of putting some pressure on this as you're polishing. That being said, if you're using a rotary buffer, then you want to be very careful with polishing this and take it very easy, and don't use a lot of pressure, and do not sit in one spot or you will burn through. Okay, I'm going to wipe it down with a microfiber towel so I don't scratch it. And we're going to take a look at the finished product. Do me a favor, smash that subscribe button. I hope you enjoyed this video. I appreciate you, each and every one of you watching, and we will see you next time.